Welcome to Audacity Works, a podcast inspired by and dedicated to the working artist, the creative entrepreneur, and generally, doing the damn thing. This exists on the premise that the world belongs to those who have the audacity to believe that their lives have value. This is for you. Welcome to Audacity Works. I am your host, Rachel Strickland, and this is episode number 97. I have a guest with me today, but first, just a couple of updates. I'm coming at you today, September style. We made it. I don't know what we made it to. Hey, it's September. How about that? The equinox is right around the corner. It almost scared me because, what are you doing here? I'm still sitting on the beach. No, you're not. You're going inside. It's going to get cold. We are very rapidly approaching episode 100, so if you are an alumni of the Audacity Project, do go check your mail, because I have sent you a request. In other news, cycle 27 of the Audacity Project is onboarding next week to the public. The waitlist is onboarding this week. They get early enrollment. But if there's any room left, it will be opening to the public on Monday, September 9th, and will begin work on September 16th. Runs through till right before Thanksgiving. The best way to know about it is to be on the email list and I write awesome emails. I'm just going to say it. I don't think so. People tell me. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Check the show notes. So without further ado, I am delighted to bring a conversation to you today with the audacious and unimaginable Sasha Galitzki. I said your name right, correct?
You did. Nice work.
I did. All right. Sasha and I met through the Audacity Project several years ago. Sasha is an adventure aerialist, and she has a unique and, to me, unimaginable way of creating artwork. She's a lifelong outdoors woman and has been enjoying the ups and downs of adventures outside ever since she was catapulted out of her dad's ski pack and into a snowdrift as a baby. Since then, she's taken matters into her own hands and become an avid mountaineer, skier, paddler, and climber. She started training aerial in 2008. It was only a matter of time before she combined her love of wild places with her love of artistic movement. Sasha uses her work to draw attention to beautiful and vulnerable natural environments. It is through this work that she's witnessed the drastic impact of the climate crisis and now uses her lived experiences to draw attention to these changes. Last month, July 2024, Sasha faced a devastating loss when her home and much of her Jasper community, yes, that Jasper, was destroyed by wildfires. This tragedy has only strengthened her resolve to highlight the urgent need for climate action. Thank you so much for being here in August. We're filming this in August, recording it in August. Welcome, Sasha.
Thank you, Rachel. Delighted to be here.
So in case it wasn't clear from the bio, Sasha performs aerial off of glaciers and shit. Just
True
from
story.
what you know about me and my love of warmth and safety, take that we are such complete opposites. We get our power from such different places. Sasha loves cold things and high places, and I do not understand how you exist, but I'm so glad to know you.
I'm also not sure how you exist in the heat of the South. Heat makes me want to curl up and die. I feel like you're drowning in air when it's really humid out, and so I love it. Dry, cold places. Yeah.
So I would love to start with the question that's on my mind, which is how you enjoy doing aerial in negative 15 degrees in such dangerous environments. 20 feet up was enough for me. 25 was okay, this is a bit much. So tell me what made you want to do that, and then continue.
Yeah, I just think nature is so cool, and frozen environments in particular. I've been a mountain girl my whole life, and I love being in the mountains. I am so blown away by the beautiful places you can end up in the mountains. And I think, no, whether you're a mountain girl or not, I know you're not, but I think everyone can resonate with the, like, if you've been outside, maybe it's for a sunset, maybe it's on a beach, maybe it's a cool tree, maybe it's a cool rock, like this sense of like, wow, this is super cool, like something outside in nature that really just knocks your socks off. That's how I feel in the mountains. And I have the immense privilege and luck to live in the mountains where I get my socks knocked off like literally every day by the beauty of these places. And I find that very inspiring. Like I want to be a part of that beauty and be able to kind of take part in that and show it off. And so when I'm performing in these environments, it's a way for me to kind of soak my skin in the wonder of these places. And also as a performer, it's an opportunity for me to invite other people to join me there, even if they don't want to get cold. If I have a photographer or a videographer along with me, they can document my performance and I can share that with folks like yourself in warmer places without anybody having to, put any crampons or thick jackets on to come to these places with me.
What's a crampon?
It's pretty much like spiky feet.
Spiky
you can
feet.
Walk on ice.
Okay.
Spiky feet. Yeah.
That was the perfect descriptor. Thank you. So can you tell me about the first time that you did this?
Yeah, it was a bit of a progression. I originally started performing aerial outdoors in the summertime in the warmth at kind of normal, quote unquote, normal people temperatures. And that was pretty great. And then I was living in a small town in a national park, Waterton Lakes National Park, which is effectively the Canadian side of Glacier National Park in Montana. It's right across the border. And it's a town of 25 people, like 25, of which my partner and I were two of those 25 people. So tiny, tiny town. And then COVID hit. So we're already incredibly isolated. Our town effectively turns into The Shining at winter pre-COVID. And then it was like Shining plus when you threw COVID on top of that. And as a performer, as an aerialist, there was no studio. There was no opportunity for me to participate in an aerial community or teach or perform. Like everything was shut down. And I know that happened for many people. But for me, it was such a small town. There was really nothing. So I started setting up, I had a portable rig. And so I started setting that up outside, and I would occasionally have a photographer friend come to visit. And I started doing these aerial projects outdoors, but I was doing them through the year for the first time. So not just during the summertime, but kind of pushing into colder temperatures, because what else was there to do? And it was so beautiful. Like I love the snow. I love ice, obviously. And yeah, being able to be outside in those environments, there were extra challenges to doing it in the cold, but it did open up these other seasons, these other ways of being in the mountains that I've always enjoyed as a skier, as a, mountaineer, but just doing them in sequence.
So let me get a kind of a scope for what this might be like. You pack up all this gear, and I assume you have to travel for some amount of time by car and then some amount of time by foot. How long would you say that would be?
It depends. Some locations I've gone to have been quite close to my home, so the drive is short, and sometimes even the walk is short. So I don't need the crampons or the skis. I can really just load out of the car. That's fantastic. Some of the more challenging environments, like glaciers, for example, there's often quite a bit more of an access challenge, which, for example, the glacier I've rigged in a few times, well, one of them is like a 10-kilometer walk one way. I think that's a little over 6 miles for the Americans. And that's, I have to factor in 20 kilometers of skiing to get there and back, on top of the rigging and the safety and actually getting into the air safely and back down again. So it's a big day. And those types of days where there's often a larger drive, often a serious access piece, require a lot more planning. prep just to make sure I'm able to do that safely. And sometimes I go out there with, the best intentions and lots of my fingers crossed, and it doesn't work out because the conditions are really challenging and safety has to come first.
So sometimes you go through all the prep and it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and that's something I think that kind of comes with operating in the mountains at all, whether it's going skiing or going climbing or trying to rig aerial in a glacier. There's a lot of just, hazards in the mountains, conditions, weather can change really fast. And, sometimes you can be as prepped as you possibly can be and the conditions change and you just have to bail. And that's something I'm very comfortable with, or, I'm familiar with that process from, all the years in the outdoors. And so that's kind of given me the patience and understanding to be able to kind of roll with what the day gives you and understand that, safety comes first and being able to make the call on when it's not going to work.
Oh, okay. I'm picturing one image in particular. So Sasha's work, obviously there's not an audience like where Sasha performs. It's like her and rigger husband and photographer, videographer, and that's it. Because the work has to be documented to be experienced. One of the images in particular is you in like an enormous ice cave. It is a cave made of ice. Like I've only seen this in cartoons before. But you went there in person and then you did fabric in this ice cave. There's no rig, so you have to be rigging from the ice.
Yes.
How do do?
That is a great question. Yes, so I am rigged from the ice when we're in glacial environments, because that's all there is, and there's no way I'm carrying a portable rig, many miles into the backcountry. I am also an ice climber, and the sport of ice climbing would not exist if ice was not capable of supporting human load, right? People have been, clawing their way up ice with those fancy foot spikes, crampons for many a year, myself included. And we have a whole bunch of specialized gear that's designed to build anchors and support dynamic human loads from ice. So for the glacier performances, what I'm doing, and like you mentioned, my husband is conveniently a rigger and a mountain guide. So thanks, Marcus, for all the support. So what we'll do is we'll usually climb up above the cave onto the glacier itself, onto the glacier proper. And at that point, it's really about finding good ice. Not all ice is created equal. So there's brittle ice, there's plastic ice, there's, really good solid ice, there's airy, pockety ice. Ice comes in all these different flavors and varieties.
What?
And some ice is so good at supporting dynamic humans, like climbers or aerialists. And some ice is terrible and absolutely not safe to hang off of. So what we're doing is we're going up, we're assessing the ice, and we are qualified to do that from our ice climbing background. And we are building an ice anchor with the ice climbing gear. And then we're dropping a rope over the edge. I'll usually go down at that point, rig up my aerial gear, pull it up, and I'm good to go. You're just standing there in silence. Just watching your face, which I know people can't see, but it's hilarious.
I am so uncomfortable. Imagining myself in your position. I'm totally in awe of it. The images are beyond spectacular. This is not optional. Anyone who's listening, you have to go see Sasha's Instagram, and which of course the links will be very obvious for you to find in the show notes. And I'll put them on Instagram as well when this airs. But I just want you to see it. It's unimaginable to me. But okay, my next question is, it's negative 15 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
My hands go numb at 60 degrees Fahrenheit. So how are you? I've seen like clips of your performances. You're not wearing gloves. You're in bare hands, bare feet, like you do when you're on doing aerial on fabric. How do?
How do? Another great question. It's tricky. It's because it is freaking cold, and I am still a human being with normal hands that also go numb and get cold. And as we know, as aerialists, once your hands don't work, that becomes a pretty non-negotiable safety issue. So I've kind of developed some, I don't know, tips and tricks over the years for how to keep myself warm. And a lot of that comes from my mountaineering background. I have spent a lot of time in cold environments, kind of dealing with keeping things warm. So that's not an unfamiliar position for me to be in. Granted, I'm not usually out in the mountains and like stripping down to a single layer of uninsulated sequins. So that's something I have done to myself to make it worse, the cold worse. So I think the number one thing is I make sure my body is warmed up, which is, we all do that before we're performing. For me, it's kind of tricky. I want to hit this balance of warming up my core as much as I possibly can, but without sweating, because sweating is water. And once exposed to the cold, freezing environments, that is just going to make me way cold really fast. So I'm trying to warm my body up, get my core as warm as I can without breaking a sweat. So I've kind of figured out the balance on that over the years. I have all of the layers. I have so many down layers. And I also have those little like heat warmers you can get, you break them open and shake them in the air. And you can put them in your gloves and your boots and things to keep yourself warm. So I usually have a few of those for my hands and feet to kind of get those extremities kind of pre-warmed up before I start dropping layers. And then I don't take those layers off until the last possible minute. I'll also have some hot tea on hand, so I can kind of drink a little bit of that to kind of introduce a little bit more heat into my core. And then when it's go time, I'm, pull those layers off. It's probably similar to a cold dip for anyone who's done that kind of program. It's kind of a quick shock. And then you're like, okay, here we are, we're doing it. And then I get myself into the air, because the nice thing about climbing up 3 stories of silks is it sure warms you up, right? So that's another way for me to stay warm, is actually, I'm moving the whole time, and I'm keeping that core warmth alive. So I do find that my core tends to stay warm enough through a performance just by virtue of working, because aerial is hard. That said, when your body is cold, it pulls all the heat into your core to keep your organs warm, because those are the most important body parts. So the quickest thing to get cold are your hands and feet. And as aerialists, our hands and feet, especially the hands, are important. So I know my body well, and I can track how my extremities are doing pretty well at this point. And I think of it as a ticking clock. Like, I know as soon as I take the layers off, I have a finite amount of time. And I know that I'm not going to even go up in the air if I don't think I have enough time to get up, do something I want to do, and come back down again. Mm-hmm. But I know that time is limited. And so I plan my choreography ahead of time very carefully. I drill it a bajillion times until I don't even have to think about it. So when I'm in the air, I'm going through the motions, and my brain space can be focused on my safety and keeping track of my body, how my hands are doing, how my feet are doing, and that clock, and figuring out like, okay, like, do I have another 2 minutes? Do I have 30 seconds? If it's 30 seconds, I need to get down now, or, or sooner. And I also plan my choreography pretty carefully to allow myself a lot of exit points. So I'm making sure that if I'm doing wraps, it's something that I can get out of and get back down to the ground quickly if I need to. And I'm also very careful to not put anything grippy, especially towards the end of my choreography. So anything that requires a lot of hand strength I'm not doing anything with a lot of hand strength, really. Like, I'm doing a lot of like footlocks, hip keys, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And especially towards the end of the routine, I know that my hands will likely be turning into claws. and I can't necessarily trust them to hold my full body weight. So I'll often end up in a hip key at the end, and then I can kind of just like slide my way down, so that I'm not having to depend on these two little claws that
little
are
ice claws.
little ice claws that are no longer up for the task of supporting my full body weight.
So how long is this clock once it starts ticking? What have you got? 3 minutes? 5 minutes?
It really depends on the temperature, the humidity, and yes, humidity is a factor even below zero or below freezing, and also wind chill. Like wind chill can be an enormous coldening factor. So
Okay.
it depends kind of on the conditions day of, and I'm kind of assessing that as I'm there, as I'm going up. I have in very cold temperatures, sometimes it's 3 minutes. I think my longest time in the air at these temperatures was 7 minutes. That was kind of a low humidity, no wind, quote unquote warmish. I think it was around 10 degrees. Negative 10 Celsius, which I think is negative 14 Fahrenheit.
Good Lord gracious.
Yeah. So 3 to 7 minutes, depending.
Okay. I'm coming back into the room.
I could see you. Yeah. Take a deep breath. We're okay.
Thank you. You're here with me. I feel safe with you. It's good.
I am.
Okay. So this is different from any other practice, not just because of obviously the dangerous conditions, but there's no putting on a song and like jamming out and just improvising and trying to like, I'll say find your flow in quotations because I've never really understood what that meant. But there isn't any of that. It has to be planned carefully.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I want to just share something about you that I loved. I finally got to meet Sasha in person. We've known each other for years online, but I got to meet her in person at the Irish Aerial Dance Festival this year, and a preview of her film, we're going to talk about that in a second, was at the Irish Aerial Film Festival, the second one. And I got to work with Sasha one-on-one in the act refinement class that I held. And music is an important part for most people, but Sasha just wanted the sound of wind. So that's what I would put on for her. It was just, she didn't want music because you don't use music. You use whatever sounds are happening.
Mm-hmm.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, the Wind Through Pines. I found it on Spotify. I'm like, this ought to do it. And you're like, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it was great. You clued in on some good wind right away.
That's an excellent wind choice.
I do occasionally work to music, like when I'm performing like indoors, which I also do on occasion. But just because the choreography and safety is top of mind for the outdoor stuff, that trying to like hit a beat or something, like it's not realistic. Like I have to be able to take breaks as I need to. So I've gotten used to just performing in the silence of the natural environment I'm in, and I've actually grown to really love that. And it kind of allows me to kind of sink into that moment and really appreciate the beauty I'm in. And I actually find that really, really lovely.
I love hearing that because honestly, a lot of people start moving because they love music and they want to express their love for music through movement, which I think is beautiful. But as an artist develops, a lot of movement artists reach a place where they're very limited by their dependence on music to be able to create at all.
Mm.
So I'm glad that we're talking about this. I'm glad that people are hearing it and hearing what it feels like to create to something that's not music at all. And then not only is it possible, it's just another way of creating and another way of experiencing the work that's not dependent on a background score or finding the perfect song. Now, I want to ask you about the rigger spouse, Marcus. That seems awfully lucky. Did he become rigger after became spouse, or was he rigger and then became spouse?
He was rigger first, so clearly I know how to pick him.
No kidding.
Yeah, we actually met. We were both ski patrollers. He was a ski patroller in Whistler. I was a ski patroller down in Tahoe in California. And he was actually down in the Tahoe area for a rigging course because he was already a rigger. And we met. It was complicated. We're in different countries. Long story short, I moved to Canada. Canada's great. And we are, whatever, living our happily ever after. But yeah, he's an IRATA level 3 rigger for anyone who knows what that is. He's also an ACMG IFMGA mountain guide, which is kind of like the most badass mountain certification it is possible to get. So I think of him as like a mountain Superman. Like he can do everything. And he's like literally the perfect, like I think like the two of us as a team, I mean, we're pretty awesome. Like the two with our two skill sets together, I'm like, we can like take over the world.
No kidding.
And he's like he's also a paramedic, just on the side, just for funsies. So yeah, in terms of
okay.
So in terms of rigging and safety, like I just I feel so grateful that I have him, literally and figuratively by my side to help me, pull off these things that I do. I don't know that I could without him. And so I'm super grateful.
And like when you want to go make a piece of work, you can't just find any photographer or videographer. You have to find these people who can survive with you in these conditions.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like it's not just me that needs that mountaineering background plus the aerial. Like I think of it as like, that Venn diagram, you need to have both. And what I do exists in that narrow sliver in the middle. But that's true of everyone who comes along. Like that's how, like Marcus is both a rigger, but he's also a mountain guide. Like he's also has that experience in the mountains. So he doesn't just rig in industrial settings. Like he can come and rig in a mountain environment and understand like what's good ice and what's bad ice, for example. But the photographers and videographers, like you said, like they also need to have that overlapping skill set where they can document well, but they can also, excuse me, move through these environments safely. Because that's, safety first.
Safety first. So thank you for that. Can we talk about niching down? Because I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on this. Tell me about that. Tell me about niching down hard, because it already seems super niche.
Yeah. I think in the Audacity Project, we talked about, finding your niche, like finding the thing that makes you special, that gets you excited, that, is uniquely you, is something that you can do, super awesome. And I have found that thing in that very narrow sliver of the Venn diagram of aerial acrobatics and mountaineering, which is great. I am excited about my niche, but it does sometimes feel, I think I actually said to you once, I'm like, how am I supposed to follow glacier aerial? Like what, I mean, I can't compete with myself. Like I like that massive ice cave, the photo you were referencing earlier. It is incredible. Like I see that image and I'm like, holy moly, like I was there and I still could barely believe it. It's incredible. And that I'm just like, I can never top that. That's it. That's the pinnacle. So I struggle with that sometimes. I'm like, what I do is super cool and I love it. But I also, I'm like, it's kind of like this, something I'm grappling with is like how to continue to explore the edges of this niche I have.
Is this the niche dungeon that you mentioned to me via email?
I did mention to you a niche dungeon because sometimes I feel very inspired by my niche. I love being in nature. I love performing in nature. That's something that I find endlessly meaningful and exciting. However, it also sometimes feels a little dungeony in the sense that I'm like,
now
yeah,
what?
how do I, now what? Like, what do I do next? Yeah.
I have a lot of compassion for that, having had similar feelings myself, especially like, I don't know. I lived good. I made good choices. I did the things I wanted to do. I'm like, no, what do I do now? And I think there is a definite cultural encouragement that we should always be topping ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think I want to deconstruct that, because I look at some of the things I've done when I'm younger. I'm like, I don't remotely want to do that again because I did it already.
Mhm.
So it probably won't. I don't even know, like, how do we quantify if we're topping something that we've done before? I imagine these are the
Yeah.
questions that are both in your head now and gonna continue. You know, what do you do when you've done such cool shit? What do you do?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think, yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot recently since, as you mentioned, my my home burned down.
Mm-hmm.
And it does feel like there's an opportunity for me to continue to perform outdoors, but maybe channel that energy into, again, like bringing awareness to the climate change that I'm witnessing in the mountain environments I live in. And so maybe I'm not doing different performances. Maybe they are similar. They're still in the mountains. They're still outdoors in these environments that mean so much to me. But maybe where they're directed, the purpose is shifting or for me. And I'm kind of mulling that over right now. Like, what can I move this in a direction where maybe this one thing about it is actually the same, but there's this new element that is something exciting and potentially meaningful that I could follow.
I see. So the most obvious way that you've witnessed climate change is the loss of your home last month due to wildfire.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because one of the questions I was planning months ago to ask you is, tell us how you have witnessed climate change, like being in these rare environments.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the
Yeah.
most obvious answer.
Yeah. But I mean, even back to that ice cave, the
Mm-hmm.
really big one, it's like Aladdin's Cave of Wonders made
Yes.
of blue sparkles. Yeah. That I was performed in that cave. That photo you're referencing was from, let me think about this, 3 winters ago. So that would have been, I think, early 2021
Mm-hmm.
was when that image was taken. And that cave was 50 feet high. And I know this because I lugged 50 feet of silks in there. And I was hoping to, I was thinking like, oh, there's this big cave. I'll, rig normal silks with, the two tails. And I got there and I was like, oh, these silks are like half the height of this huge cave. And so on the fly, I rigged them effectively as a rope, like as a single fabric. And it barely reached from the lip of the cave at the top to the snow on the bottom. So the cave was 50 feet high.
Mm.
I returned 1 year later to film for Wild Aerial, and I brought an even bigger, length of silk so I could get those two tails and do, more interesting choreography. And I got there and the cave had shrunk. So I had longer silks, but a shorter cave. And again, because I knew how long the silks were, I knew that the cave was now 27 feet tall. So it
Oh
had
my,
shrunk almost half in
oh
1
my
year.
God.
And not only had it shrunk vertically, it had actually pulled back. It had receded backwards. So where the original edge of the cave had been, it was now, I don't know, like I couldn't measure that as well, but it was now like you had to walk further to get into the cave, right? And last summer, I heard from folks in the mountains that the cave had collapsed
Oh my
over the
God.
summer. And so I went back this past winter, so early 2024, to just because I wanted to kind of witness it for myself. It's been such a special place for me, and I'd heard it had collapsed, but I wanted to just kind of, I really wanted to see it for myself. And so I went back, and sure enough, it was completely gone. And once again, it wasn't just that the cave collapsed downwards. Everything that had been the cave had melted, and so it was all just flat. Like the glacier that was there was no longer there. It was moving backwards up the valley. And that was in 2 years, like the rate of change that I was seeing in my own eyeballs in like 2 years. It's not a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's a huge amount of ice, as you can see in that photo. All of that's gone and more. And that was just like, yeah, it blows me away.
So you use your work to bring awareness to this. I'm going to put, if you'll allow me, and if it's all right with the photographer, I'd like to, when I publish this, create a second post just of that image so that people can
Sure.
see it, since we've referenced it so much. Would that be permissible?
Yes. Yeah, I know the photographer. He would be thrilled.
Okay. Wonderful. Because for any artist, documentation is very important, right? Documentation is everything. Something I learned too late, or later than I would have liked. At any rate, for you, it's absolutely essential. And so, speaking of documentation, you made a film, because you did photography for a long time. So what made you decide to make Wild Aerial the documentary? I said that weird. Documentary.
We know what you meant.
Thanks.
Yeah, I've been doing kind of aerial adventures outdoors for many, many years. I've done a lot of work with photographers, which has been so exciting and amazing. And I've built some really great relationships. I've really enjoyed all of that. But it has kind of been, for a while, it was kind of like, I was kind of sitting with the idea that like aerial is a performance art. It is art in motion. It is a movement art. And photography, I think good photography can capture motion in an image, but it's still a still image. And I had been kind of percolating in the back of my brain around the idea of they should be on film. Like I should have video or something beyond just these images, stunning though they may be. It would be cool to do something with film to capture more of the experience of performing in these places. And as luck would have it, serendipitously, a filmmaker who knew one of the photographers I'd been working with. And we actually were out together on a glacier adventure day. I wasn't rigging that day, but we were just kind of, out scooting around a glacier as you do.
Like you do.
And, we got to chatting and kind of hit it off. And I think a little while later, she reached out to me. It's like, hey, have you ever considered film? Like, would you be open to considering documenting what you do in film? And I was like, actually, yes, that has been on my mind. I honestly didn't know where to start. And she's like, I would love to explore this idea with you. So we had some chats, some meetings, had a good rapport, and we embarked upon what has become the Wild Aerial short documentary film, which is, it just wrapped. Like we're done. It's finished, which is wild to me. We started, Trixie is the director, Trixie Passes. She reached out to me almost exactly 2 years ago. So it's been a kind of 2-year project.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We were originally going to do filming over one winter. We were so excited about what we had that we wanted more. So we filmed over a second winter. And then we wrapped up post-production recently this spring and early summer. And we've just finished it, submitted it to our first film festivals here in early August. And eagerly awaiting, to hear back what festivals like what we're doing and where we'll be premiering. But it's out there, it's done, it's finished, it's will be out there in the world soon. And I'm pretty excited to share it. I think it's cool.
Like I said, I only got to see the tiniest bit. There was a little, 5-minute preview that you put together for the Irish Aerial Film Festival, run by Paul Thompson. And
woo, Paul.
It was, woo, Paul. It was gorgeous. It was beautifully done, and it really made me want to see the rest of it. So I'm going to go ahead and tell folks, if they want to keep up with Wild Aerial and where it ends up premiering, that'll be in October. So I would there's 2 Instagrams. There's Sasha's Instagram, and there's an Instagram specifically for Wild Aerial. And I'm just going to say you should follow both of them. You should follow both of them.
I say that too.
Yeah.
Just to do it.
Just do it. Just do it.
If you want aerial and glaciers, both accounts have a lot to offer for you.
Correct. It doesn't mean you have to do it. You can just look at someone else doing it.
You can join me. I'll do all the cold hand stuff.
Great. That's one of my favorite moments. Is I won't spoil it. I won't spoil it. Never mind. Y'all forget what I just said.
I know the moment.
Yes,
Yep.
I knew you would. So tell me about the pre-performance elk poop routine.
Yes. So while I'm not out making a film and freezing my butt off in glaciers, I do also perform quote unquote, normal people performances. I do kind of gig entertainment, festivals, corporate gigs, as you do. And I often perform outdoors just because I do live in small mountain towns that rarely have rigging available. We don't have venues or theaters that have rigging. So I'm usually performing with my portable rig, sometimes indoors, sometimes outdoors. And when I'm performing outdoors for like a festival, there's just elk poop everywhere. I live in a town of 4,000 people, and there's wah, wah. But there's a resident herd of elk that also live in town with the rest of us. And they own the town. So they kind of do what they want. They walk around, they eat grass, and then they poo. And so there's just elk poop everywhere. It's just part of mountain life. And so when we're setting up to perform outdoors, we usually have to do a little bit of a sweep. And got a pretty well refined swiping technique now, where I've got my boots on and I'm just got like the step left. You swipe with your right foot with the inside edge of the foot out of the rig area. Step swipe, step swipe. So I kind of do a concentric circles, getting wider until the area is clear to poop, and then I can take the shoes off, get the bare feet, and perform without worrying about having literally poop between my toes.
Oh my God.
While in the air.
All up in your fabrics.
Yeah. And you don't want that. I mean, elk are lovely, but you still don't want, you don't want that.
I don't care how vegetarian they are. I still don't want, poop isn't a thing
poop.
that I want to perform amongst ever.
Same. Yeah. So just a little bonus to our performing.
So can you talk to us about getting an agent?
Ooh, yeah. So I have a very wise friend. Her name is Renee Robin. She's a photographer and magician who I've had the great honor to work with on multiple occasions. And she's just so wise. And she was like, "Oh, you've got a film coming out. Like, you should do some PR work so that you can get your film in front of more eyeballs, because it's going to be awesome and people should see it. And they're not going to see it unless they know about it. And PR work can help with that." And I was like, "Oh, that's a great idea. I had not thought about that." So I started kind of, thinking about that, looking around. I ended up with a amazing PR agent. Her name is Lynn Henderson. She's fantastic. And she's been helping me kind of get the word out on what I'm doing on the film. And she's been incredibly helpful and supportive on just kind of helping me get things out there that I don't have the time, bandwidth, or training or experience, frankly, to do myself. Because I'm not a PR agent. I'm not a marketing expert. I'm just a person who likes mountains and sequins sometimes together, and having somebody kind of on the team to help me, just share what I do with her unique skill set that I do not have, has been really great.
I realized I should have clarified, when, not for your sake, because you knew exactly what I was talking about, but when aerialists and performing artists in general hear the word agent, they think, oh, someone will get me jobs and then I won't have to market myself or look for them. I'll just get hired and they will take a percentage. And such a creature is kind of like an albino deer. Like, you've heard of them, but you've never actually seen one. So what I should have said is PR agent, which is a thing.
Yes.
It is a deer that you have seen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've never used one, but I'm super intrigued. I mean, I'm not premiering a huge film anytime soon, but if I were, you would be a phone call that I would make to ask for your thoughts on that more. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. The
What were
booking
you
agent
about to
does sound
say?
great. I don't have one of those. What was I about to say? I think the PR agent experience has been wild. I feel like poor Lynn has had to go through a lot of like training me on like what PR is. I'm like, oh, could you help me with this? She's like, yeah, not really my job, but like very, very, very tactfully. But she's like, here's what I do. This is what my job is, and here's how I can help you. And so that's great. Like
Love it.
I'm going to be on television tomorrow, which is something entirely new to me.
What, live or recorded?
Being live television for like part of a morning show, as you know, talking about my experience with the Jasper evacuation and wildfire. But hopefully, like, you know, with the help of Lynn, I'm going to be able to give a shout out to Wild Ariel in the film. And we'll see how that goes.
Wow. Okay.
I know.
I just started sweating.
Same. Yeah. Same. That will probably
you're
be
going to be great.
Just a sweaty mess.
So Sasha, like me, identifies as an introvert.
Yes.
People never believe me when I tell them I'm introverted.
Same.
They're like, but you do so many things. I'm like, well, yeah, I learned other skills. But
well,
still,
I feel like we live in an extrovert world. Like our society favors extroversion in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I think most introverts know that, whether consciously or subconsciously. And many of us have developed ways to better fit into that world. Even if it's not always our comfort zone, we figured out how to make it work.
What choice do we have?
Exactly. It's like either that or just be like awkwardly shy in every interaction, which, you know, hard to get things done.
Yeah, I tried that for most of my childhood and adolescence.
Same.
Have you seen that meme going around that's like, oh, wow, you're so resilient? It's like, thanks. It was that or death.
Right. Totally. Yeah.
Thanks.
You're like, thanks. Great.
It was that or nothing. There was no other choice. But because you knew you were, it was time for you to like talk about your film and put your work out there, which is, you know, our job as artists, make the work and put the work forward. And so you decided to work with a vocal coach.
Yes, that was another recommendation of my wise friend, Renee Robin. So she was like, get a PR agent, do voice coaching. And then you will be better prepared for things like interviews and possible podcast or television appearances. And here we are. And she was totally right. So yeah, I did voice coaching for I think a month or two a few months ago. It's been tremendously helpful. I did not know there were so many things to know about your voice. So I learned many things. And the quote unquote worst part of it is I did this voice coaching after we finished filming Wild Ariel. So now, as we were going back and like pulling all the footage into a finished film, I'm watching myself speak on camera, which is always awkward. And I'm now doing these reviews with the benefit of voice coaching, but I'm watching myself speak pre-voice coaching, and I'm seeing all the things that I have just learned are not ideal. So that was very painful. I do think that I have vastly improved my ability to speak clearly and communicate well. The film, however, does not reflect that training. So there's the post-production team did a really great job of editing out all of my like ums and likes.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm watching it back and I can still tell like some of the lines I'm saying, like there's like these weird, like very subtle like hitches where it's not fully smooth. And I can tell like, oh, that's where I edited out, or they edited out like me being an awkward speaker. And I can tell now, but
I doubt
hindsight's 20/20.
We will be able to tell. But yeah,
I'm hopeful it's one of those things that I can notice, but nobody else will.
Yeah. It sounds awful for you. But because I think you speak beautifully. Of course, I'm speaking to like post training.
I know,
Sasha.
Yeah, I know. Should have heard me before. Whew. So I've left to my own devices. I will speak very fast, and I will say and like a lot, which is totally normal. I'm a human being.
Right.
But it's been helpful to just kind of have a heightened sense of awareness of how I can communicate better.
Yeah, it's helpful for interviews.
Yeah,
for sure. And all right. Well, good luck on the television tomorrow.
Oh, thank you.
Chukas, Merd, all of the good words.
Yep.
I had a question that I wanted to ask, which totally like places an unnecessary burden on you, so you can decline to answer it if you want. But I know what I would be wondering as someone listening to this episode who does give a shit about climate change, which is, the point of your work, besides just being gorgeous, is to bring awareness to that. And then the first question people have is, well, what can I do? Because we feel so helpless in the face of what's happening, understandably. As someone who like lives and works in that space, do you have any insight into action items other than obviously like recycle?
Right. Yeah, I think there are a bajillion different ways you can have a positive impact on climate. So many options that it becomes overwhelming and it feels like I don't even know where to start. I feel that way all the time.
Yeah.
So I find it helpful to pick a lane, pick a path, pick what, like, a thing that works for you, and don't try to do all the things because you're just going to end up overwhelmed. For me, what resonates for me is, I feel like this is going to feel like it's out of left field, but bear with me. I really think about buying local and voting. And I think of those two things as both as voting. One is voting with my dollars on community and on local farmers and growers and artists and makers. And that not only tends to be better for climate, buying local, supporting what's happening in your community, it also builds community, which is an incredibly valuable thing and something that I love to do. So that is something that it doesn't feel like a chore. It feels like a joy to buy local and support my local community. So then instead of being like, oh, I really should do this and it feels like a drag, but I should do it for climate, it's like, heck yeah, I'm going to like buy this thing from this local maker and it's awesome. Or I'm going to go like grab this from my local farmer and it's great. That gives me a really positive feeling. And it's also better generally for climate. And I think the other one, I mean, just vote for people who also care about having a positive impact on the environment. That one's pretty self-explanatory, but I think it's really important.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that perspective. That's going to stick with me, I can tell. Is there anything else that you want to share in particular before we wrap up today, Sasha?
I don't think so. I have had a lovely time. You were very kind about asking me if I still wanted to do this because life is pretty lifey for me at the moment. And I appreciate your kindness and understanding. But you were like, or we could just like chat and you could be distracted for an hour. And I was like, that sounds great. So thank you. It's been a lovely chat and I have appreciated the distraction and being able to just chat about art and glaciers.
A few of your favorite things.
Absolutely.
I'm just going to like fangirl on you for a second because when we met through the Audacity Project, were you about to move to Jasper? You were about to move to somewhere very small.
I think, yeah, I was in the time where I was moving from Waterton, which is a town of 25 people, to the bustling metropolis of Jasper, which has 4,000 people. So arguably both very small towns, but yeah, slightly different scales of small.
I remember what like the big question mark that was floating above your head, because there I was telling you to like find collaborators, and you're like, there's no one here. Like, how am I going to participate in my culture? How am I going to do this from here? And I just want to remind Sasha of a few years ago that was her big question. And I wish I could tell her, just wait.
Yeah.
You'll see. Because look what you did.
Yeah, it comes together. Sometimes not how you think. But yeah, thank you.
Well, it's thrilling. Thank you for sharing it with us. Y'all go follow Sasha so that you can see the film in its full version when it premieres. Darling. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Rachel.
That is it from us today, my friends. Just wanted to say thank you so much for listening, and thank you to Sasha for being here. If you have requests for future episodes, you can always reach me on Instagram at Rachel Strickland Creative or on Patreon at Rachel Strickland Creative. This podcast is powered by Patreon, so extra special thank you to my amazing patrons for standing with me on all the ups and downs and in the follow fields and in the fecund fields. Did I say that right? I don't know. Go do something impossible and don't go back to sleep.